Governor, thanks so much for sitting with us today to talk about your run for a third term.
Nice to see you, Dennis.
Good to see you. I first interviewed you 20 years ago when you were running for the U.S. Senate. When you look back 20 years ago, what have you learned about running for office since then?
Stand up for what you believe. That was a bit of a Hail Mary pass back then in 2005, but I really felt strongly that the war in Iraq was the wrong thing for America and for Iraq. So I got involved and I made my case. And I got to know the people of Connecticut along the way, and I've stayed involved ever since, running for governor.
You've told me this year that you really love the job. You've said it for years, actually, that you love being governor and that you were leaning toward running. What pushed you over the top to make that final decision to run?
Look, I do love the job. I come out of the business world. I was an executive. The idea of going down to Washington, D.C. and all that back and forth does not float my boat. Being an executive here in this state, turning around a state that I think was in a world of hurt 8 years ago, gets me energized every day. We're just getting started.
And what's your response to people who say, well, 2 terms is enough?
We have a lot of work to do. Look, I came into office 8 years ago, say 2018. We're looking at $2 billion deficits as far as the eye could see. They had a hard time getting a budget last time. A lot of people leaving the state. Morale was down. I've tried hard to turn that around. We've had 7 balanced budgets in a row. A lot of people moving into the state or staying in the state. Then we got derailed by COVID. Now I've got Trump. So there's always something going on. But I think we're in a position to really make a difference for the next 4 years.
That 2-term comment, by the way, came from Democrats who want to run for governor and want your job. Just kidding. Let's talk a little bit about how would you characterize what's going on in Connecticut right now in terms of the time and history we are in?
It's a transition. Look, we went through a tough, 50 years. A lot of manufacturing was leaving the state and leaving the country. Our cities were shrinking. Today, our manufacturing is stabilized. Our unemployment rate is less than national average. Our economy is growing again, 10th fastest in the country the last cycle. But we still have a way to go. And I got to rebuild our cities, make sure there's housing there for young people to be in, keep our budget balanced, make sure we have the resources to invest in our future.
Let's talk about some of these priorities for this third term, and namely housing in the cities. Where do you see it going, and how much do we need?
Every single business I talk to, they say, Governor, will there be housing for young people, single people, workforce housing? Where will that be? Do you have vibrant urban cities? Because there's sort of a stereotype of Connecticut. It's a little more suburban. And for the first time in a long time, like I said, our cities are growing again. We're building a lot of housing in our cities and our small towns. It's a big priority. If you're serious about affordability and opportunity, it starts with housing.
Let's talk a little bit about jobs and manufacturing and even corporate jobs. What do you see as part of your next term in terms of attracting companies to come to Connecticut?
I think that we have the wind to our back. It's going to be much more intellectually charged jobs going forward. We have the most sophisticated advanced manufacturing in the country. We're growing that. A lot of our big manufacturers want to get the supply chain closer to home. You think of AI and quantum, that plays to a state like ours, which has a very well-educated workforce. Keep those jobs here in the state and growing.
There are some who say with what's going on in New York, the big change, new mayor there, that it could be a good opportunity for Connecticut to maybe snag some businesses or snag some new residents. Have you heard anything about that you can share with us today?
Look, I wish New York City the best, and I will work with Mayor Mondami and do what we can. Their success is our success. More directly, though, are people reaching out to Connecticut? You bet they are.
Companies are calling your office saying, I want to move?
Companies are calling. Obviously, the real estate brokers, especially in the southern part of the state, their phones are ringing off the hook.
What's the next step? Do you offer them incentives to move, or do you think they'll just come anyway?
Let's slow down. But I do tell the advantages of this state. I mean, we've got our fiscal house in order. We were able to reduce taxes, lots of job opportunities. Free community college will train your people going forward. There are a lot of good reasons to be in the state of Connecticut. I don't have to knock New York City to get them here.
We are in a school right here in West Hartford. Tell me a little bit about your plans for education, how to expand it, improve it in the next term.
I think education starts too late. We're making the biggest down payment on early childhood education, infant and toddler, right through pre-K, like they have right here at this school. Give those kids a better opportunity, allow mom and dad to get back to work, saving young families maybe $10,000 a year in daycare costs. We have some of the best K through 12 systems in the country. I know what that means for kids. I also know those same businesses that are reaching out to Connecticut saying, should I move here? They always bring up our K through 12 system, how good it is.
Let's talk a little bit about UConn. It's growing in terms of the number of people who are attending it. A little bit more difficult to get into than it used to be. What's your response to that?
UConn is doing better and better every year. Like you said, it's very competitive. People really want to be there right now. They're so highly regarded and ranked, not just basketball, but academics. They're key to our manufacturing future, what they do in terms of advanced materials and other R&D that coalesces with what we're doing at our advanced manufacturing facilities going forward. I like to see them grow and prosper in the state. A lot of people come to Connecticut for our great universities, including UConn. Now my job is to keep more of them right here.
In your judgment, what's the biggest problem facing Connecticut today?
I think sometimes we get a little down on ourselves, and the glass is always half empty. And I think we've been turning that around a lot. I think people feel a lot better about the state. But I got some work to do. I got to bring down the price of housing, and I do that by expanding housing supply. I got to bring down the price of electricity. I do that by having more electric generation. You know, we've had some of the highest electricity prices in the country for the last 50 years here in New England and here in Connecticut. We're going to get that turned around.
Who would you rather face in the election next year, Ryan Fazio or Aaron Stewart?
I don't think about it. I really don't. I know them both pretty well. I focus on my job. I let the politics take care of itself.
What's the biggest change we'll see in a third term?
I think the biggest change in the state of Connecticut, you're going to see we continue to keep our fiscal house in order. We continue to attract jobs and young people to our state. We continue to grow our cities and make them vibrant. You know, they were much bigger 50 years ago than they are today. Keep them growing. We have a lot of work to do to speed up our transportation system. Thanks to the infrastructure bill, we're getting a lot of that done. I think over the next 5 years, you'll find it a lot easier to get around the state of Connecticut, spend a little more time with your family in the morning before you go to work, and get home earlier.
Your closest advisor is your wife, Ned Lamont. Did she take convincing to run for a third term, or was she on board from the beginning?
You know, I think she was on board from the beginning. You know, she is. She's my North Star, and every day I talk to her first thing, end of the day. Unfortunately, she's down there, and I'm up here a lot during the week. She's working really hard, investing in healthcare, making a difference, but she cares as deeply about this state as I do. We do this together. You
lost the Senate race in 2006, run for governor in 2010. When you look back at those days and look at where you are now, what goes through your mind?
First of all, never give up. You know, just dust yourself off and get back in the game. And, you got to introduce yourself to the people of Connecticut. They got to have a better sense of who you are. I think Connecticut, you and I, we've been through a lot this last 8 years. We've been through a lot. I think I've gotten to know this state really well. I love this state. I think they've gotten to know me and know that I really care about making this a better place for your kids and their kids.
Governor Lamont, best of luck. Thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks, Dennis.
We'll see you again.